Well, hello and welcome to Tam Talks, a place for real and honest conversation. You guys, I'm so grateful that you've joined us on our podcast, or possibly you're watching us on our YouTube channel. We are so glad you're here. And as you know, we're doing a series called The Next Chapter. And if you know anything about me as a life coach, you know that I believe in story coaching. I believe in helping you learn how to tell your story and write your story and live your best story. And it's been my honor over the last several weeks to interview people and ask them about their next chapter. You know, in every book, there is a next chapter. And as I mentioned to you last time we were together, sometimes a chapter opens up with completely different cast of characters and a totally different plot, but it's a new chapter. And that's what so many of our lives are like. We turn the page and this new chapter opens up all kinds of new opportunities. So that's what this whole series is about, just interviewing and dialoguing with people about their next chapter. And many have come out of things like cancer or divorce or setbacks, and yet that new chapter was real, that new chapter was relevant, and that's what we want to talk to you about today. Now, without any further ado, as they would say, my next guest is one of my favorite people on the planet. Dr. George Haines could not only write the next chapter, but his life is a volume of chapters. And not just because you're older than me, Dr. Haines, but because you've lived such a life. First of all, a life of integrity, but a life that makes such a big difference in so many people's lives. So let's jump right to it because I want to hear your story. Let's do a back story on you, just a little bit where you grew up and your backstory, and then I'd like you to kind of get to the multiple doctorates you have and degrees that you have and what brought you along the journey where you are today. So first of all, welcome to Tam Talks, and we're so glad you're here.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, Tammy. I'm looking forward to reading your new book on miracles.
Well, thank you.
And the reason partly is because my whole life has seemed to be a whole scenario of attached miracles. And as I look back on it, I think there's no other explanation than he did it.
That's
and
so good.
So to start, I was born in Maryland, brought up on a farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. First miracle, God prepared me to be a public speaker. I never felt I'd be a public speaker, but he's caused me to win public speaking contests throughout Pennsylvania for all the public schools. And it's been a journey. And so came time to go to college. So another miracle. My father and mother, 8 children, and they vowed that they would send everyone to college or to get their education. My older 2 sisters, one a teacher and one a nurse, got their education. I was next. And so they were very resourceful. They sold a little part of the farm off to send me to Penn State. And I was grateful for that and continued on with this path of public speaking as I was on the varsity debate team. And we would travel up and down the seaboard, on the eastern seaboard mostly, with colleges and universities. But one thing I wasn't quite prepared for, and that was when I was a freshman and everybody else, upperclassmen on the team, they kept joking about going to prison and debating these prisoners as if it were not anything but just a lot of fun. But the day came, and the prisoners were milling all around. Yeah, generally debate is a cerebral activity with 6 or 8 people, and that's it. The whole prison was out, as if it were a big event.
Wow.
So I said to the upperclassmen, "What's up? This is no small operation." They said, "Haines, you're in the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, the closest federal penitentiary to Washington, D.C. So you see this fellow you're going to debate?" "Yeah. He's a former United States Senator."
Wow.
And he went down the list, too, of all these. And they got in trouble with the law. Principally because they were on the take for themselves, and they did that instead of help the public. Well, anyway, they beat us, as they always did. And you knew you were up against pros and that sort of thing. But driving away from the Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, I felt a sadness that here are men with that kind of talent and that kind of power.
Wow.
That could have been used for the public and for the good of the country, and yet they used it for themselves.
Well, and George, two things. One, obviously, it was choices, and we all know that we have choices and opportunities. And sometimes when I'll call the enemy, Satan himself will come just as he did to Jesus, and he tried to offer him the world. We have to have enough integrity and discipline to say no to the things that are so appealing. And that it leads me to partly the next chapter, because God was preparing you as a young boy to debate. You are wise. You are a wise, wise man, and I've watched you for many years. Your tongue is wise. And I think it's because all of the years that you've had to maybe even make some bad decisions along the way and then do course correction and then to pour into so many people today, because I look at your life and you're constantly ministering, discipling, encouraging this next generation. And I'm just wondering if it started as a young boy in those opportunities that you had along the way to debate, to learn, and to grow.
And God called me in the process to be a minister.
Yeah.
And so that was quite revealing to me. And I was supposed to go to seminary. So I did go to Princeton Theological Seminary. But before that, I graduated early from Penn State, not knowing that I would be a year early. And I asked why. And they said, you got plenty of credits to graduate because you've been taking 25 credits a semester. And I said, doesn't everybody? I was screened from the farm, got up to milk at 4 o'clock in the morning, the cows, and got down at 8 o'clock, so no problem. So I did that in Aberdeen, Maryland, in a high school, teaching English and problems of democracy. This being election day, there are still plenty of problems for our democracy to survive. And so I did that, and then went to the fall of 57. That's a long time ago. And we went to Princeton Theological Seminary. I was invited in my first summer to be a student pastor in the Hamptons. This happened to be East Hampton, and they had a place called the Springs. So this is where all the gathering poets went and painters, and had the opportunity to influence them for Christ in non-traditional ways, of course. And so that happened, and then I went on to graduate. Well, they asked me back a second summer, so it was a fun time. I graduated from Princeton Seminary in 1960 and went to be starting at the bottom of the ladder as an assistant pastor of the Overbrook Presbyterian Church, which was suburban Philadelphia. Okay? And then a year later to suburban Trenton, New Jersey, where I became pastor. And there was an interesting experience. August 28th, 1963, I found myself on the March to Washington with Martin Luther King.
This is the next chapter, because this is a new chapter. And what we're really, I was going to hopefully ask you, if you hadn't gotten there yet, to share that story. Because listen, what I'm trying to coach you in and talk to you about is that these are seasons in our life. Opportunities come. God opens doors of opportunity. Life opens up doors of opportunity where we get to express ourselves. And here, Dr. Haines is educated. He's a smart man. He's used his intellect in so many ways. And God's getting ready to redirect him down a new course with a new opportunity in something that many of us only read in textbooks, and that was the march of Martin Luther King. And you were part of that. You were in the audience, you were in the march, and God was redirecting you down a new path, right?
But it wasn't a popular path because there was a lot of strong feeling against...
As today.
Yeah, as today, the racial problems here. But in studying Martin Luther King, many don't know that his doctorate was an earned doctorate from Boston University. I studied his thesis because I was busy writing mine. And he wrote his thesis on nonviolence and showed how Christianity overcame the might of the Roman Empire because of nonviolence. The same thing happened with India freeing itself from Great Britain, and a whole series of events. So I was impressed that I like nonviolence because I believe that's the atmosphere in which God can work, although we need to stand up against the Hitlers of this world.
Sure.
And there comes a time for violence to right the wrong violence and so forth.
Well, let me ask you, George, because we just have a few minutes left here, but let me ask you, because as we walk through these chapters, and obviously as you're listening to this, you know that this is a man who has disciplined himself to study. This is a man who has great knowledge for the next generation, something, George, I would say that not many young people have today. I think we've become very soft, we've become very simple, and to be able to have a mind that's studious is something to be admired and really encouraged. But let's talk about this last chapter, because there's, like I said, there's volumes of your book. We could do multiple podcasts on your life, but I wanted to segue there because with Martin Luther King and where we are today, now, obviously in 2022, and we've watched so much of this and so much of this hate and so much of this, division with color or race or gender. Can you just speak to our audience right now on, we have not evolved much from the past. So let me ask you this. What are the steps you would say? Just give us 3 steps. What do we need to do to try to go deeper and wiser in our culture today, from all the years that you've lived? What are the 3 things you'd say to the audience today? These are the steps we need to take to be a different society than we were in the 50s and 60s.
We need to seek the truth. Today, it's become very divisive. Whose truth? Christ's truth.
Yeah.
And Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life,
Amen.
and nobody comes to the Father but by me.
Amen.
So we need to seek truth. How do we do that? We need to do it not in a combative manner, but with the love of Christ. We need to love people who oppose us. And that means being willing to listen to what they have to say and start with where they are. We always have to start with where people are. Too often we start at a different level and we never connect. And we have to connect with people. We have to love the people. We have to realize that we're all seeking truth.
That's good.
And we need to respect. We need to respect people, because if we respect people, they'll respect us. And we need to start there with those 3 points.
That's so good. George, all right, so let's just hit them one more time. We have to, do you say listen was the first one?
Well, we have to
no
seek
truth.
the
You said we have to
Yeah.
seek truth. Okay, write these down because these are good. This comes from wisdom. Seek truth.
In love. Okay. And then we need to show respect as we connect and as we have dialogue, because communication is everything.
You know, George, I just got back from speaking at an event in Missouri, Branson, Missouri, and we talked about way back after the pandemic when I saw those 3 arrows. God gave me that vision. Do you remember that?
It was amazing.
And it was a vision where an arrow of fear, and then an arrow of dissension, and then an arrow of confusion. And those were the 3 arrows the enemy was trying to come after humanity. And that falls in line with what you just said, because fear, there is no fear in truth. Right? And then dissension with the local churches, learning to just really respect and love one another. And then confusion. God is not an author of confusion. So I just hope that your takeaway today with this podcast and the wisdom of Dr. Haines is that you'll begin to just search in your soul. I'm just asking you this both as a pastor and a life coach. No one can do this for you. You have to seek truth. You have to love others and respect others. And when we do this, I believe that in a spirit both of love and prayer, that God will truly hear our heart cry, and we will see him do the things that we say in Ephesians 3:20, exceedingly above all that we could ask or think. So that's my prayer for you. We all have the next chapter of life. Where are you right now? Are you willing to turn the page and realize it may be a whole new set of characters? It may be a whole new plot that you had expected. But God is the God and the author of your story. Let him write it. Let him redeem it. Let him restore it. God is a good God. What does the next chapter of your life look like? Hey guys, I appreciate you being here for TAM Talks. As I said, it's always real and honest conversation. But I want you to really begin to ask God and seek God on behalf of what he wants for you. Thanks for joining us here at TAM Talks. Stay tuned. We've got another story for you coming up soon. God bless. Have a great day.